And I know when it comes to Iran, that I've spoken up on many occasions. Indeed, we did yesterday in the Free Iran group, and Madam Rajivi, and I know the Honourable Lady for Southend was there leading it and chairing it for a short period of time as well. The issue of freedom and democracy in Iran, especially in freedom of religion or belief, continues to escalate. It is depressingly so, and for that reason this debate is so important.
The reality is Iran is ruled as a totalitarian theocracy. It is not a democracy. Ultimate power rests in the hands of the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and the unelected institutions under his control. Political activists supporting democratic change have been particularly vulnerable to detention and death over many years, despite which the organised resistance, the PMOI and MEC remain determined to establish a free, democratic and secular republic, and I wish them every success with this struggle. Last year, at least 864 people were executed, the highest figure since 2017. Any use of the death penalty is unacceptable to me, and I believe this substantial increase reflects the regime's inability to suppress the protests which have arisen. But given they have virtually no avenues for reform, the people have no option but to resist, to demonstrate, to defend themselves, and to seek alternate forms of opposition. Iran has been witnessing a massive popular uprising, a call for freedom and democracy, largely led by women and young people. I've heard it described by some as a revolution, and I hope it is a successful one. It has clearly rattled the Tehran regime, and I believe that this is partly behind the regime promoting and encouraging conflict out with its borders, as it seeks to dampen the momentum of the protests inside Iran, while simultaneously rallying the regime's own forces behind the Supreme Leader's fundamentalist agenda. While I welcome the recent announcement of additional sanctions on senior Iranian officials, I do wonder why we are not taking an even stronger approach. As a minimum, we should urgently proscribe the IRGC as a terrorist organisation. I have lost count of the number of times that I and others have called for this action. The proscription would be a tangible step by the UK in the furtherance of freedom and democracy in Iran. We should also support calls for the UN to dispatch international observers to visit Iran's prisons and meet those detained by the regime. We should all support the democratic aspirations of the Iranian people. I pay tribute to the work of the resistance units which emerged in late 2017 and have helped inspire Iranians to defy the prevailing tyranny. In conclusion, the SNP stand in full solidarity with Iranian journalists, women, men and young people calling for democratic change. The bravery of Iranian citizens standing up against brutality and dictatorship is beyond inspiring. I wish them every success in seeking a new democratic and secular republic in Iran. It would be better for them and the world when they succeed. Thank you.
The member for Harrow East has mentioned the camp in اشرف, a free camp in Albania. I think it's important that he's made the point that the Interparliamentary Union, of which I'm on the executive of the British group, will be sending a delegation to Albania, and I will make a point of making sure, as best I can, that the delegation will raise this during their visit. We are also very aware that Iran is active in this country. In 2015, the police discovered an Iranian-linked bomb factory in London, and since the beginning of 2022, the Iranians have been responsible for at least 15 potential threats against British or UK-based individuals. Because of these very real threats, I believe that the sanctions which have been introduced and further ones that have been announced should be welcomed. One of those additional measures ought to be with total proscription of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. I understand there's an ongoing debate in government about this, but if the government does not bring forward appropriate measures, Labour will do it if it forms a government, and if the government does it now, Labour will support it.
Unwavering support for democracy and freedom worldwide is central to Britain's diplomatic engagement. This is why Iran's continued violation of its people's rights, in conjunction with its widening pattern of malign activity around the world remains a high priority for the government. The UK has been consistent and clear in its condemnation of Iran's undemocratic and disproportionate response to the protest movement. Iran has been designated an FCDO human rights priority country. And since October 2022, Mr Deputy Speaker, we've sanctioned 94 individuals and entities for human rights violations. And this includes decision makers responsible for drafting and implementing Iran's mandatory hijab legislation, as well as political and security officials involved in the crackdown. The UK opposes the death penalty as a matter of principle in all circumstances across the world. Iran's surging use of executions is a matter of grave concern for the United Kingdom. Last year, Iran executed over 700 people. That includes protesters. Far too often, the death penalty is imposed absent of any fair trial or due process, and ethnic minorities such as Kurds and Baluchis make up a disproportionate number of executions. We're using all levers at our disposal, including working with the international community, to push back against this egregious crime. Notwithstanding, we have real concerns about the intent and activities of the IRGC, but the separate list of terrorist organisation prescriptions is kept under review, but we do not routinely comment on whether an organisation is under consideration. We are actively disrupting Iranian malign activity through a range of tools. This is about using the effective measures to curb Iran's destabilising activity. Comments have been made about Iran's interference in other countries, notably today in Albania, which is typical of its nefarious tactics. We support partners in the face of pressure from Iran, and we'll be interested to learn from the Honourable Member from Kefali's visit and the IPU's visit, and if there's any other intelligence we need to learn from, we'll gather that in. Within Iran, the repression of women and girls, the uninhibited use of the death penalty in violent crackdowns on dissenting voices cannot go unchallenged. But this is also true of Iran's behaviour in the region and beyond. We'll continue to work with international partners to make clear to Iran we won't stand for destabilising activity that threatens our values and our security, and indeed the security of the region.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And with the leave of the House, I would just thank honourable members from across the House, where we are sending a joint message to those people that are currently administering Iran, that we want to see a free and democratic Iran, women in particular having the rights that they would enjoy in this country and other countries around the world. And the Honourable Minister laid out a series of different measures that we're taking as a country to combat Iran and in particular the IRGC. But it's clear it's not working. The number of executions continue to increase. The nefarious activities of the IRGC continue. When we've prescribed Hamas, Hezbollah and recently Hizb ut-Tahrir, surely the head of the snake must be prescribed. And then we can look forward to a free and democratic Iran, and actually, as we always say, next year in a free and democratic Tehran.
As on the order papers, may I say aye? Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.